Hey y'all, Kenny here. Thanks for joining me. I'm out here today with my Thompson Center Encore chambered in 44 Remington Magnum. It has a 24-inch MGM barrel, 1 in 20 twist. I'm shooting hand loads in this gun using the Hornady XTP 240 grain bullet and H110 powder. Now, I worked up a load last fall at 1,850 feet per second and shot well, and I was all ready to hunt, but as time drew near, I began to have reservations about this bullet, mainly because of the labeling on the box. It says that the recommended operating range for this bullet is 700 to 1,500 feet per second. So I ran a little test, and I can tell you this bullet is quite capable at 20 yards at 1,850 feet per second muzzle velocity. In fact, I ran it all the way up to 2,100, which I would consider to be the max velocity for this particular bullet. So if you haven't seen that video, there's a link in the description you can click on, or just visit my home page. So I did take a buck with this rifle this past fall, not at close range as I expected I might, but at 90 yards. He was quartering away. I shot him about middle of the rib cage on his left side. Bullet exited on the opposite side in the fleshy part of his shoulder. A nice large exit wound, excellent blood trail. He was dead right where I shot him, but he went ahead and ran 50 more yards before he figured that out. Now, what I want to do today is test this gun at distances greater than 100 yards, because I think this rifle is 150 yards capable at least. So I'm running a muzzle velocity for this test of 1,800 because most of your guns chambered in 44 Magnum have 20-inch barrels or less, and I think that you can safely attain 1,800 in those guns if you're hand loading. I have read, don't know this to be a fact, that the white box Winchester jacketed soft points will do 1,800 feet per second plus in barrels of that length. So what I'm going to do first is shoot at 100 yards, so we'll have a bullet to compare to, and then I'm going to shoot at 150 yards, see what the expansion looks like there. I'll also give you some numbers as we go. So this is my test medium. It's a redneck ballistic gel, if you will. I have a gallon jug out front filled with wet rags. Behind it I have 2 gallon jugs filled with sand, and I have a couple jugs of water just to back it all up, keep it from tipping over. Now, a lot of people will use water for this test, and that works great, but every time you fire a shot you destroy 3, 4, 5 or more jugs, and I don't drink that much milk. So this setup can be used over and over again. In fact, you take a little duct tape along with you, you can patch up your jugs and just keep on shooting. Alright, so there's the hit, 100 yards. That's where it went in the second jug. You can see it's in the back of the second jug. See if I can find that easily. Well, it's in there. There we go. Beautiful. Yeah, nice. Right here. See the bulge. There's the bullet. Pretty good mushroom. We may try this at 200 just for kicks. So, boy, we knocked them over with that one. Here's the hole in that upper jug. And there's the bullet. That was easy. Man, check out that mushroom. That thing's got some thump at that distance. 200 yards. So I'm going to take a minute and toot my own horn. This is a Nikon scope that failed on me a few years ago. And Nikon won't repair their scopes anymore. They'll just give you a voucher to honor the warranty. So I tore this scope down and repaired it myself. I know that sounds crazy, but my motto is if somebody made it, I can fix it. So I did get the scope repaired, but I punched out the reticle in the process. It had a BDC reticle, so I made my own. Now, I'm not smart enough to do those mathematics and place those crosshairs in the right spot. I just guessed at it by looking at other scopes. I actually set it up so that around like 308 would have a 200, 300, and 400 yard reticle. But as it worked out, I put the gun on this scope and I have a 150, a 200, and 300 yard reticle in the scope. It matched up perfectly with this bullet and this performance, and I know it sounds crazy, but that's how I'm able to hit those jugs down there. I'm definitely not just holding over. So if you haven't seen my scope repair video, I provided a link in the video description. Just click on that link. You need the knowledge and I need the views. So let's take a look at the results. This was my first 100 yard shot. I reduced that powder charge and didn't check zero. I'm really surprised that it made that much of a difference in the point of impact, but it actually did. So I dialed it up. This is my 100 yard shot. This is my 150 yard shot. This is my 200 yard shot. And these two are 300 yard shots. So why did I take two 300 yard shots? Because I forgot to turn the camera on. So let's take a look at our bullets. This is the bullet that I fired last fall in the close range test at 20 yards. And it measures at its largest diameter 770 thousandths, just a little over 3/4. This is my 100 yard bullet. And at its largest point, it measures, that would be 730 thousandths. This is my 150 yard bullet. And it measures 670 thousandths. This is my 200 yard bullet. And of course, it expanded much more than the 150, but I have an explanation for that. There was a week between shots. I had an appointment the day I took the 150 yard shot, and so I just set my gallon jugs aside, and I meant to wet those rags again. That is important if you use these rags, because you want them to slow the bullet down before they hit the sand, and I think the rags were drier, and that explains why this one is so much larger than the 150. This is the 300 yard bullet, and it measures 560 thousandths. So pretty good expansion out of it. Of course, it tells us on the label that this thing will expand all the way down to 700 feet per second. So it is a pistol bullet. So let's run through these numbers right quick. Now, a lot of people would say the 44 Magnum is a 100 yard gun. But when we look at the numbers, clearly this gun is capable out to 150, maybe even beyond, if you and your rifle are capable of placing your shots accurately. And with these large diameter bullets that are moving slow, there's no hydrostatic shock, so the animal dies by hemorrhage. I know that sounds kind of morbid, but the big bullet just does tissue damage as it passes through, and so the bullet needs to be well placed, double lung shots preferred, and so make sure you're capable of doing that before you extend the range of this rifle. But here are the numbers. At 1,800 feet per second muzzle velocity, you have 1,724 foot-pounds of energy. At 100 yards, 1478 for velocity, 1164 for energy, and I'm zeroed at that distance. At 150, I have 1340 for velocity, 957 for energy, and I'm down 4.8 inches. Now, that 957 falls right between that 900 to 1,000 foot-pounds of energy that most people say is required for deer-sized game. I think people do underestimate a large diameter, slow-moving bullet and the damage that it can do. So at 200 yards, my velocity is 1222, my energy is 796, and I'm down 14.6 inches. At 300 yards, my velocity is 1,054, my energy is 592, and I'm down 52.5 inches. Now I want to compare this to a pistol. This is Hornady factory XTP ammunition with a 240 grain bullet. The muzzle velocity is 1350, the energy is 957. So if you drag that number over and line it up, it is right at the 150 yard numbers for the rifle. People shoot deer all day long with a Red Hawk. At 50 yards, the pistol velocity is 1230 and the energy is 806. So if you drag that number over, it lines right up with the 200 yard shot with the rifle. Now, I'm not saying this is a 200 yard capable gun, but a well placed bullet would get the job done at 200 yards. Death may be a little slower. Again, we don't have any hydrostatic shock to help us totally tissue damage and hemorrhage. But a lot of people kill deer with the Red Hawk at distances greater than 50 yards. So those are things to take into consideration. Clearly, I'm comfortable taking deer with my rifle at 150 yards with this load that I currently am using. So I'm really stoked about this rifle. I've never shot it past 100 yards until I conducted this test, and I'm especially surprised at the accuracy out at 300 yards. I mean, this is a bona fide varmint cannon right here for sure. Now, one thing I didn't mention was the BC on this bullet. The XTP, it's .205, and that's better than any bullet I've found, with the exception of some custom bullets. And what that does is really improve the trajectory of the 44 mag, but it also gives it a lot more downrange energy. If I were going to shoot a factory load, I'd give the Hornady XTP 240 grain load a try. Now, as for reloaders, the 44 mag likes to be crimped. I use a Lee crimp die, and I put a heavy crimp on. What that did for me was increase my velocity, gave me a much cleaner powder burn, and it lowered my ES. Now, I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop right here. If you like gun stuff, guitar stuff, or just stuff in general, subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching.